Today we're going to be reviewing some candles sent in for testing, review, feedback here on the channel by a subscriber by the name of Mira, and I believe her candle company name is Sense to Remember. And if this is your first time here, my name is Wade with Black Tie Bar and Candle Company. On this channel we talk about making candles, selling candles, and really anything related to the industry at all that could be beneficial to candle makers. So hopefully you guys enjoy videos like this, but if you're interested in other types of videos, other than the review videos, then just check out the video list here on the channel. And I'd love to have you if you're not already a subscriber. With that being said, if you've never seen one of these review videos before, the way they essentially work is pretty simple. They are sent to me voluntarily with the intention of reviewing them and testing them and providing feedback here on the channel. It's a great way to learn from one another. Plus, it's just a good way to get some feedback from someone else in the candle industry. And hopefully some of that feedback is beneficial to you, if not just reaffirming and maybe entertaining as well. So we're going to start off by unboxing the product. We're going to take a look at the physical characteristics of it first. The label, the jar. We're going to talk about the wick, the wax. I'll try to make some guesses potentially added as well. And everyone is at different stages of their candle making process. So some people are just now getting started and they don't really have a finished product. So they might be sending me something just for some basic feedback along the way to kind of help them where they might be stuck or where they're at so far in the process. And others might have a full product and maybe they're just wanting some feedback on that finished product. All right, so I've got this opened up here. I'm going to go ahead and get everything out of the way because it's hard to work here on the table with the box. So I'm going to pull everything out of the box first. First of all, great job with the packaging. I don't know how well the camera is showing it here, but there's individual boxes inside surrounded by packing peanuts and then some nice little tissue paper kind of closing it in as well. So great job on that. Okay, we've got a lot of stuff here and I don't know that I'll have time to get to all of it on the video, but I will definitely certainly be testing each one, even if off a video. But let's go ahead and see what we're getting started with before I really determine that. Nice little thank you card, branded thank you card. And then we've got a letter here. All right, so this letter is semi-personal, so I'm not going to really discuss it too much here on the video, but it's a really nice letter, some backstory to how Myra got started, and then also to let me know that there are, I believe she said 4 candles in here. So we will certainly open each one here, and then I'll test them as well, and then let you know how they burn, talk about the wicking and things like that. And then we've got a, LOL stapled little sticky note here. My assumption is that, hopefully the camera can get this. My assumption is this has some information, some secrets about the products on this sticky note. So if you haven't seen me do these reviews before, I like to try to make some guesses on the wicks and the wax and all that being used just for fun. And then at the end, see how close I am. So I'm going to set that aside and we're going to go ahead and start opening boxes. First of all, great job, Myra, on the packaging and the custom stickers and labels and everything. That's a lot for someone that's just really getting started. And you know you're about to start your shop if you haven't already. But for being this early in your candle making journey, I mean, that's quite impressive. You've already got a lot going on. This is much more than I had when I first started. All right, so everything has been really nicely packaged so far. Well, here we go. This is our first candle, and it is a gorgeous one. It is called Tropical Vibe Fruits, Citrus, Grapefruit, Lime, and it's a soy paraffin wax blend. So a parasoy blend. The jar I'm fairly familiar with. This is an apothecary style jar, fairly common jar. In fact, this jar was really made popular by Yankee Candle back in the day. So let's go ahead and, I like the gold tie on it as well. And very good job on the label here. The label actually fits perfectly. So it is mostly mostly black and white, but it does have some gold foil on it, as well as a splash of the color right in the middle. Yeah, I mean, it definitely smells tropical. It's definitely got a tropical vibe. Also, you can't help but notice right off the bat is you're going to see a little bit of mica sprinkled on the top, gold mica. I think that's, again, fits the vibe perfectly. So very good presentation overall. I mean, you're doing a really, really good job with everything you're going for here. I just wiped my hand on it, and now I got foil on my hands. Oops. Okay, so this is going to be a little tricky. I'm going to touch the wax to try to see if I can figure out what we're working with here. We know it's a parasoy, but I'll see if I can dial in something more specific. But I got to be careful here because I don't want this mica on my fingers. I was going to guess maybe something safe that a lot of people start with when it comes to parasoys, which would be like 6006, but it's too soft for that. So it's almost like a 4627 paraffin wax. If you're familiar with that, it's very Vaseline-y, very greasy. And then it's mixed with soy. So if I had to guess on the wax, I would say something like that. But yeah, I can't be for sure. Definitely a threaded cotton and paper wick. So these wicks are very common. They're cotton, but they have little paper threads woven through them. When you see these wick, it's usually one of 3 wicks. It's either a HDP, a CD, or an Eco. Sometimes CDN as well. Looking at this, I would have to say either an HDP or a CD wick. It can be really hard to tell the difference between an HDP and a CD wick just looking at it. To me, it seems like more like an HDP wick. It's hard to tell the difference until you burn one of those wicks, which one you're working with. I would say probably an HDP though. But after I burn it, we might find out something different. This is a custom warning label, so I want to show that as well, which is really cool. So it's got the warnings as well as the instructions and her name, as well as the net weight. So great job all around. It is a very, very soft, kind of greasy wax. So I've noticed it's kind of probably from the shipping process. It's kind of left some residue along the top edge and along the sides. There's not a whole lot you can do on that when you're working with just super low melt point waxes. All in all, very, very good job on this first candle. Once again, even in this box, it's very nicely packaged. And this one has 2 in it. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the wax in each candle, assuming they're all the same. Now, if I think they're different, I will certainly mention that, of course, and talk about it. But if they're all the same wax, I'm going to focus on really what the differences are between the candles. Okay, so a very different jar here. This is a hex jar. Very small, probably a 6-ounce candle. 5-ounce candle. This one is called Autumn Weather. Citrus, cranberry, cinnamon, orange, apple, oak wood. I can just tell really quickly looking at the wax here on the side of the jar. It's going to be the same wax. I think it's fairly obvious to this point that the gold is part of the branding. I thought at first it might have been just part of the tropical vibe, but seeing the tissue paper and the ribbon and everything else we're seeing here, gold is just part of the overall branding. The first candle, Tropical Vibe, I don't really know what specific fragrance oils it is. It could be a combination of many, or it could just be one, but a lot of tropical fragrances smell very similar, so it's hard to discern them. This one, on the other hand, I'm not quite sure because I smell a lot of different things here. Based off of the description of the notes here, I would say it's mostly just kind of a spicy kind of cranberry. It smells really good. Autumn, weather, cranberry spices. That's what it smells like to me, like a cranberry harvest. Okay, this one is called Cozy Evening. Mint, apple, peach, oak moss, and musk. Again, same wax. Same brand. Ooh. That one smells familiar to me. Same wax. The wick is cut a little short on this one, so I think it's still going to burn fine, but it makes it a little harder to figure out what it is. But I'm assuming it's the same or very close to the same size as the previous one. But as far as the fragrance goes, it's called Cozy Evening. That name makes me think about kind of bundling up around a fire, so there's some fragrances like that. So there's one called Flannel or Cozy Flannel or something. I've got that. It smells sort of similar to that. There's a Sweater Weather that's really close to that as well. There's a lot of those kind of feel-good, comfy blanket type fragrances. It smells kind of like that, and it could be one of those, but it feels like there's a little something else there as well. Something a little more sweet. I think that must be the peach that I'm smelling. I don't know. I think I like that one the best now. Yeah. All right, so I got to say, for someone that hasn't been doing this very long, you're offering a lot of different variations in your products, which if you can pull it off, cool. That's a good thing. But if you are new watching this, don't feel like you have to offer so many different products. Most people start with just kind of one jar, maybe 2 styles, and grow. And then you can add stuff to it. So if you're new, don't feel intimidated like you have to do that. Now, part of me would say, if you're just now launching your store, this might be too much. But I get that's more personal preference than anything. I mean, it's nice to have options, but at the same time, you want to have a kind of a singular focus. So for me personally, I probably wouldn't be offering this many styles at the very beginning. I'd probably focus on 1 or 2 and kind of go right after that. But again, that's just my own opinion. That's what I would do. We're all going to do different things. So we all are going to approach our business a little bit differently. So with that being said, let's take a look at this new jar. So the label, the gold ribbon, everything is still really consistent. So let's go ahead and check this out. So really pretty lid, kind of a prism effect. So once again, we're dealing with the same wax, and that's pretty evident. You can tell it visually looking at it. You can feel it. Very soft. I still think we're dealing with a 4627 mixed with some soy. It could be 464. In fact, that'd be my guess. If I had to make a guess, let's say IGI 4627 mixed with 464. But there could also be mixed with some 6006 or something like that as well. This one is called Smooth Touch. It says Vanilla, Lavender, Woodsy, Musk. That's exactly what it smells like. Exactly. The first thing I pick up is the lavender and woodsy musky notes. And then you get a little bit of that sweetness too, which is the vanilla. Really interesting fragrance. I don't like pure vanillas very much. But this is really good. This combination of fragrance oils is really good. But overall, you can tell it's the same brand. All these candles come from the same company, the same brand. Even if they differ a little bit, they're still recognizable, which is really, really important when you're first starting out. It's okay to have different options, but if you want some brand consistency, you don't want to confuse your market, confuse your customers. You want them to know that they're getting something from you, and you want to keep reinforcing that brand. So far, I'm pretty impressed. Well, I'm going to get to testing, and then I will be right back, and we'll talk about how these burn. While I'm testing, I will be recording some of the footage and kind of letting you know what I'm thinking and what's going on with the candle as they're burning, and then I'll wrap everything back up at the very end. All right, so we are about an hour in here on the first burn, a little over an hour. You can see I've got a pretty full melt pool here, starting to get a little bit of a mushroom cap here on the first burn. Now, I will say on the first burn, it is more common to get mushroom caps quicker in my experience, but I'm sure that does vary by wax as well. So far, I would say it's doing pretty good. It's a little hard to tell this early on the burn as usual, but I just wanted to show you where we were about an hour, a little over an hour. I would say at this point, I might be thinking it might be one size too large, but it's really, really too hard to tell this early on. I was smelling good hot throw within about 20 to 30 minutes at the most. So this wax, being mostly a soft paraffin wax, is definitely going to have pretty good throw, and it certainly is not disappointing so far. Okay, here we got that Tropical Vibe candle in the small apothecary jar. Got a near full melt pool here, just a bit over an hour. Starting to get a little bit of mushroom cap. The flame posture is pretty good. I would think that this is probably also maybe overwicked one size, but we will know a lot more once we continue to burn this down. Pretty good hot throw. I'm smelling this very easily within the first 30 minutes, so great job so far on this one as well. And then this is the small Cozy Evening candle, the 5-ounce candle in the hex jar. This was the one that wick was trimmed really close to the surface of the wax, so I thought it might have a little bit of an issue in the first burn. It's definitely been a pretty small flame, but it's working out pretty well, actually. So we've got a pretty full melt pool already. And again, it's just over an hour, but this is also a small jar, so this is perfectly normal. So far, it's burning great. I don't have anything else to say on this one so far. And even the hot throw on this one, being a small candle, is still really good. Now, I do have it in an office, so it's not going to be super strong in a really large area, of course, because of the size of the candle, but it is doing really good. Also, if you've noticed, the mica is staying away from the flame, which is great, and it's also usually pretty common. And so it is staying more to the edges, so it's not affecting the burn or the wicking very much, but it does look nice while it's burning. You also see a few little bubbles here on the side. This is pretty common with waxes, with certain waxes with low melt points. And that is because as the wax softens up, little air bubbles form, but it's not being consumed super fast. So you start to see some of the bubbles just form around the outside. No big deal at all, but it is just something to note in case anyone else has ever experienced that as well. So we are just under the 3-hour mark, so I'm going to go ahead and extinguish this one. This is that smaller candle, Cozy Evening, and it is just burning beautifully. Like I said, it was trimmed pretty low to the surface, a little lower than I would normally trim it, but it did just fine, and it recovered just fine, and it is burning perfectly. So I think this so far is passing the test. Perfect burn profile. No soot, no smoke, no mushroom cap, nothing. So very, very good job on this to this point. All right, here we are back to the Smooth Touch candle, which is that vanilla lavender. This is in that fancier jar with the fancier lid. And as you can see, we're about 3 hours in. I'm going to go ahead and extinguish the flame. We've got a pretty much a complete full melt pool. I actually like that hang up on the side just a little bit. Anytime you get that full melt pool across the top on the very first burn, edge to edge, half an inch deep, that's just too much. So I actually think this is burning great so far. The mushroom caps did not get any larger. It is flickering right now, but that's because I'm talking and my breath is actually hitting the flame and causing a little bit of a draft. But as you can see, this is burning really, really good so far. The fragrance throw is great as well. And to complete the testing of the first 3-hour burn cycle on this one, as you can see, we've got a full melt pool. It is quite deep. It's quite impressive that it, in 3 hours, was able to get this even, consistent melt pool in a jar this size with one wick. But I do think this one might benefit from one size wick down, at least at this point. We'll know more once we test a little bit further. But it's doing a pretty good job. But after 3 hours, I think that's kind of an excessive mushroom. But that is also typical for a jar this diameter when you're trying to use one wick. Most of the time in this jar, you'll see 2 wicks used, but this is a super soft wax, so I'm not surprised she tried 1 wick, and so far it is doing pretty good. We will know a little bit further. Like I said, that first burn usually does create a little bit more of a strange looking wick. So here we are on the autumn weather candle. This is the other small candle. Now I didn't record lighting this one like I did with some of the others, but I wanted to show that this is a couple hours in, and you can see this one is a little bit more overwicked, I think, than the other small candle. And that's noticeable by the large mushroom cap that's already forming. It's also a larger flame, and it's a pretty deep melt pool for its very first burn. The wick's also leaning a little bit as well. Now, wicks will lean in soft wax. That's pretty normal. But if it's doing it this early in the jar, it's because there's usually too much weight on one side of the wick, and that's usually from the curl or the mushroom. So I would say with this candle, it probably could benefit from 1 wick size down for sure. And then I think this one would be in really good shape as well. So this is burn number 2 on Smooth Touch. And as you can see, we're about 2 hours in, and we've got a really full melt pool, a pretty large mushroom. The flame is pretty tall, and the jar is starting to get pretty warm, especially for being this high up on the jar. So while it's still burning fairly decently, I think we're starting to notice that it is a little bit overwicked, and it's really common to get a full melt pool quicker the further you get down in the jar, but this is still only the second burn, and we got a really full deep melt pool just about an hour into the second burn. So I think this would definitely benefit from probably 1 wick size down as well. This is also the second burn on Tropical Vibe, and as you can see, it is still burning pretty well overall. We do get a really quick full melt pool. Again, it is a really soft wax, so that's not too shocking, but that mushroom is really the byproduct of using 1 wick in such a large jar. It really consumes a lot of wax in order to get that flame and to get that melt pool. So that's really the biggest problem with this one, and you're going to see a little bit more of a kind of a dim flame, and that's because it's being consumed or hidden by much of that carbon buildup on the top. So if it were me, I think I'd probably consider double wicking this with 2 small wicks. That would just be something I would try, but otherwise it is a good burning candle. All right, guys, this will probably be the last video of the actual candle burning. Unless, of course, something major changes from the rest of the burn, which sometimes it does, and I will definitely mention that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what has happened during the burn. As you'll see right here, this one's been burning about an hour and a half, and it's doing pretty good. Halfway down the jar, you've got almost a full melt pool, which is pretty normal. It's going to get a full melt pool faster when you get further down in the jar. Not much of a mushroom yet really going on, so it's just doing a really good job. You'll see a little bit of some smoke and soot kick off here and there, but that's pretty normal. What I wanted to point out though is this candle and this is pretty true with the others as well, it definitely needs trimmed in between each burn, which that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's pretty normal. That's how most candle makers are making their candles, and that's totally fine. We as candle makers, unfortunately, do also know that a lot of our customers don't trim their candles. So with that being said, I like to try to make mine so they don't have to be trimmed necessarily perfectly every time, just because you never know if they're going to, but that is not always possible to do. I had let this candle burn a few times like a power burn and without trimming to see what would happen, and it certainly was overwicked when I did that. But when I did trim it each time, it did burn pretty, like almost perfectly, to be honest. But I just wanted to point that out, and I'll talk a little bit more about it here in a minute, but I just wanted to point that out, that if you're getting different results based off of different feedback from different people, then that would be one reason why. Some are trimming wicks, some are not. But overall, this candle burned pretty well top to bottom. All right, this will probably be the last burn on this candle that I show on video, unless, again, something changes significantly through the rest of the burn. But this one's been really consistent. From the very first burn up until now, it's been pretty much the same every time. It gets a good full melt pool, but without being overly hot or overly deep. It stays pretty centered and even, and in a jar that size, that can be difficult to achieve, so great job on that. It does get a mushroom or carbon ball buildup on every burn, but on a jar this size, that diameter, that's pretty common unless you're using multiple wicks. That being said, even with that buildup, it is still burning pretty well, and I never really had any major issues. Now, it certainly needs trimmed every single time before you relight it, but that is also pretty common. Okay, so I've had some time to test through these candles, and hopefully through some of that footage you could get an idea of what I was thinking and looking for when I'm burning these candles. But that doesn't really give you the big picture. So I like to finish this video with my overall thoughts about everything, how the candles burned, what some of my favorite things were, and then of course we're going to look at the answers to some of the materials that Maya left us. One of the smaller candles burned perfectly, and then the other one, I think it was Autumn Weather, was a little bit overwicked. So even though the same jar, same wax, that's one example of how fragrance oil can make a difference. But overall, burned pretty good and smelled pretty good even for that small size. I really want to spend most of the time on the larger two candles. The Smooth Touch, and that was the larger tumbler looking jar. As far as the wicking goes, you'll see a couple times in the video I show that the wick looks a little excessive, large, overwicked, and I'm concerned it's going to be too much. But then later, it burns just fine. And so it's a really good example that some different times in the burn process, the wick can behave differently. But outside of that first burn, it really burned really good most of the time. As far as the second candle, the other large candle, the squatty apothecary jar, that was Tropical Vibe. This was the one that I was kind of shocked they were able to use just one wick and get a good burn the entire time. Now, this one burned differently than the rest. It seemed like it was more of a cord wick. I don't know that it was. I believe I made my picks earlier on thinking it was HTP or CD, but it didn't lean too much. It actually stayed pretty centered. Now, I did get a fairly decent mushroom, some carbon buildup on the wick as it was burning. However, it never really impacted the flame, and it never really caused an issue. It never got larger. It kind of hit that ceiling, and then it never really changed. And of course, you need to knock that off or trim it off before you relight. But as long as you do that every time, this candle burned really, really good. I mean, it got a full melt pool safely. It was consistent. It smelled really good. So really good job across the board. So I had some concerns. At first, the wick seemed a little large, but then after that first burn or two, they really settled down and actually were wicked, I would say, properly for the most part. You might be able to get away with one size smaller. Otherwise, they burned really, really good. And I didn't get a lot of soot buildup or anything like that. So good job overall. Something to talk about real quick. I mentioned mushrooms several times in the video. And a lot of people do their best, like are just so freaked out at the sight of a mushroom or carbon buildup on their wick. And I'm going to tell you, they don't bother me as much as they do other people. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, trying to avoid a mushroom ever is just a lost cause. Like, they're going to happen sometimes, and sometimes it's outside of your control. Other times it's just you're going to drive yourself nuts and almost burn yourself out trying to avoid them all the time. So first of all, just understand that they're not that bad. Yes, you can try to limit them by adjusting your sizes, but it's not always possible. Secondly, the mushroom can actually serve as a reminder to your customers that wick needs trimmed, because most customers don't necessarily know by looking at the length of a wick, like they need to trim it or not before relighting it. But if they see that buildup on the top, most of them are at least going to knock it off or trim it off. They understand that they probably shouldn't just light it the way it is. So it can actually have a benefit, almost like kind of this ironic benefit to your customers that it reminds them to trim their wick. So I'm not hugely worried about a mushroom unless that mushroom causes issues. If the mushroom causes the flame to be too large, too hot, too big, or it's flapping soot and smoke all over the place, then that one's a problem. If it just develops a little bit of a carbon head, but doesn't really impact the performance of the candle, then I wouldn't sweat so much. I wouldn't worry about it too much. So that wraps up this video. I want to thank Maya for sending these candles in from Sense to Remember Candle Company. She did a really, really good job. Her theme is consistent. I think she's proud of what you've got so far, and good luck to your business. And good luck on your current products. And I wish you all the best. If you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section. Of course, give this video a like if you like these type of review videos. And if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing to the channel. Show some love to Maya in the comment section, and I will see you all next time.